one of the other things before we kind of get out of here is that, you know, over the last 2 years there's been pretty significant debate on the structure of DHEC and what it should look like, whether or not we should strip out the environmental side of it and combine it with other agencies and let the health side be separate. And I know that y'all have had strong feelings about that, as well as the business community having strong feelings about keeping DHEC together to ensure that science is used in the decision-making process, which we've always been comfortable with DHEC's position of using science to make decisions rather than letting emotions. Your thoughts on structure of DHEC, combine it with other organizations, benefits, shortfalls, what should be done?
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, we've kept pretty much the same position for the last couple of decades. When restructuring in 1993 came about, we've kept pretty much the same line. We certainly think, in today's environment, we certainly see even more of a link between public health protection and environmental protection. So I think that anytime you try to separate those parts of state government from each other, communication breaks down. You don't get as efficient oversight of those activities. There's a number of states that are aligned like us. There's about 5 states that are aligned like us, but there are many states, although you think, well, maybe that means there are 45 that aren't, a lot of those are very different as well. Right. So I think from that standpoint, we think that the more we can do to strengthen that link and relationship between public health and environmental protection, the better off all of us are going to be. Because as business people, you don't need to be having to wrestle with 2 different standards, one set by public health and one set by environmental protection. You certainly don't need to have to go through and get 2 separate permits. So I think that there are some things that are a benefit of having those 2 parts together. I also think when you're looking at human health issues, when you've got an abandoned site that has some contamination that's moving off of that site into communities and stuff, we need to be working together collaboratively, public health and environmental protection, on those issues. And we have done that, we feel like, for the last 35 or more years. You know, splitting the agency was tried back in 1970, and it was quickly put back together in 1973. Right. And we think it's worked very, very well, you know, for the last 37 years or so.
I reckon from a business community standpoint, what can the business community help facilitate operations of y'all's organization, or things that we can do to expedite permitting? I know that what do we need to do to educate our folks to make y'all's job easier? I reckon it's a question.
Well, I think the one thing that we're going to have to do as an organization, because of budget cuts and because of loss of staff, is certainly we've got to take a very comprehensive look at those activities that we do, because obviously we can't continue doing all of them. But we've got to decide on those things that are the most meaningful. And that means, when I say we decide, I mean collectively. That means that all of us together have got to sit down, environmental groups, public health groups, business communities, so on and so forth, and decide those things that if we don't have the resources to do, that, you know, we probably don't get as much bang for our buck for as we'd like to, and just focus on those core public health and environmental protection programs, and make sure that we fund those well. And that we all work collaboratively on the processes of doing that. So we're probably going to have a lot more conversations with your organization and many other organizations on trying to bring folks together to look at that, take a comprehensive look at that, based on the
time frame, or have y'all set a time frame?
We haven't set a time frame. We started having some internal discussions about that. As y'all probably are aware, back in the mid-90s, former Commissioner Bryant, led about an 18-month charge on doing that, and we saw a lot of adjustments in regulations because of that. Right. But what the business community came back with, if we lessen some of the administrative burden, your willingness to come up with more fees or more assistance, if you will, to help cause that to get through the legislature. And I think that we're going to have to take a similar approach this time around. I think we can't keep doing all that we've been doing. Yeah. And I think that we're certainly going to have to take a very comprehensive look at all the activities that we've got going on and decide the ones that are most meaningful for us. And of course, we've got the ones from the federal level that we've got to do. Sure. But at the state level, where there are some opportunities to relook at some things, I think we need to do that.
Well, this is, I don't know if you want to get into this, because it's probably a real political question, but how do you see the current administration's at the national levels impact on DHEC, and you know, what are the long-term mandates or the short-term mandates, and are you going to be able to handle that without the funding from the federal level, and what impacts that going to have on businesses down the road?
Yeah, I think that, I appreciate the question. I think that one of the things that we've been trying to make loud and clear to the federal government is that if you're going to ask and expect more out of us, we're going to have the funding, or at least trade off some of the federal regulatory requirements for some of the new requirements. We sometimes can't do both if you don't give us any additional funding. So we think it may be time for the feds to even take a more comprehensive look at how they've got all the federal funding structured and the federal mandate structured, and give us some flexibility on that. We have a really good relationship with EPA Region 4 and been very successful in working with them, and have to give EPA headquarters credit. I mean, they've certainly have given us the flexibility to look at multiple programs under a grant scenario instead of kind of a silo approach and giving us money just for this and just for this and just for this. They just give us a pot of money and let us work out a strategic plan that they sign off on that gives us a little more flexibility. And I hope they do more of that, because that's one way we can get around some of these things and still be able to carry out our duties and responsibilities.
Are you finding that y'all working with other environmental agencies in not only this region but across the country and asking EPA to make those types of decisions? Is there a collaborative effort or concerted effort by environmental protection agencies at the state level to have a coordinated effort?
Yeah, there actually is. There's an Environmental Council of States. Okay. It's an organization made up of all 50 states, all the environmental directors. Bob King, our deputy commissioner, is a member of that. And then we have another organization, a health organization, called the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. And I was very fortunate to serve as the regional representative for Region 4 and Region 6 on that up until this last December. And I actually chaired an environmental health national committee for them, policy committee. And we do a lot of work with them. ECOS and ASTO together work with EPA and some of the other federal environmental agencies, NOAA, Corps of Engineers, and others, in trying to work on environmental issues and trying to make sure that they understand and have a clear understanding of what we do as a state, what our challenges are, and then how some of their changes may impact us, not just short term but long term, from a staffing standpoint, how they kind of merge with what's already on the books, and to make sure that we aren't kind of reinventing the wheel, or that they aren't creating some unintended consequences they may not have thought of or thought through when they put out some of these ideas through the regulatory process.
Earl, we appreciate you sitting down with us and talk about some of the issues that I know are important to us and the concerns that you got, because I know you've been a conscientious leader of this organization for a long time, and I've known you for a long time and respect the work that you do, and we appreciate all you do for not only the business community but the state of South Carolina. And keep up the good job, and if there's anything that we can do, please just yell at us.
Well, thank you, Otis. Again, yeah, you're right. We go back a long ways, but it's always good. I think in any circumstance, in any situation, relationships are very important, and we try to keep very good relationships with all the organizations that we interact with, and we certainly intend to keep a good relationship with the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce.